Final ring, here I go.
Welcome to The Final Ring, a podcast about competitive Apex Legends. I'm here with my co-host Zoro and our guest star Marianas. How are you guys doing tonight? And Mari, would you like to introduce a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm Mari for short, and I have been in the scene quite some time now. Some people would remember maybe from the old T1 Apex days. When that server first formed, I was actually one of the first people in it and got involved that way. Got involved in hosting scrims, hosting tournaments, and just involved in the competitive scene in general. And I actually used to compete for a period of time too. And now I'm old. So I'm washed.
Let's go.
What was your highest placement
In competitive?
in ALGS? Yeah.
So my old team actually was a finalist in OT6, where we were pretty proud of making it that far. The semifinals lobby we made it through was pretty challenging. Teams like CLG, Energy, Godsent, etc. were all in the semifinals lobby that we had to work our way through. Finals, yeah, they didn't quite go as well as the semifinals, but we had fun doing it. So
Nice.
The Stink Boys, let me tell you, the Caustic players, the man, come on. NA, Caustic, I don't know.
we were running Caustic before it was cool. Okay.
I feel that.
It's coming back, right? With the potential buff.
Yeah, it's almost more like a rework, I think, than a buff. But yeah, it's
Caustic
kind of like
meta,
Yeah,
let's
kinda.
go.
it's shifting it to more of having an initial like immediate danger rather than a prolonged like area of denial. So it's kind of a rework in a way.
It's going to be
Sorta.
interesting
Yeah.
to see how
That's good.
players use them, for sure.
Yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how Seer fits into the meta too.
That's true. There's going to be a lot of meta changes. It'll be interesting to see next week when things shift around.
Very excited, very excited. Hopefully everybody starts taking scrims a little bit more serious, starts scrimming again. And we can start seeing some of those meta changes, those comp changes, see how everything works out.
I think with the announcement of ALGS, we're likely to see some more people get involved in scrims too for that reason.
For sure. And all those, well, first off, just the announcement of ALGS in general. You got the pro league now. You got the the open competitions, the playoffs, and then the final championship. And I think the total is what, $5 million on the line.
I think so. Yeah, $5 million. And it starts. Registration opens on the 18th, which is actually coming up pretty soon.
The
For those
18th
qualifiers of August.
Of August. Wow, I thought it was September. I
Well,
gotta get a team together.
That's when the first qualifier is. It's September 11th to the 13th.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
that makes
registration
sense.
opens the 18th of August, so
That's coming up quick.
So get your teams together. Get ready. Yep. We gotta
absolutely
start farming. I mean, with the additional countries that they just added, I think that we'll see maybe some new talent that hasn't had the opportunity to, I guess, show in ALGS, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good point. A lot of countries actually got added this go around with ALGS, which is good for the scene overall. More competitors in general. So looks like 10 to 15, somewhere in that range. Maybe
16
more.
new countries.
16. Yeah.
Not even to say the whole allowing console to play as well. And
yeah, that'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
it's gonna be. I mean, they do have that 0.4 aim assist, so they got a little bit of a nerf to compete. But that being said, it's gonna be interesting to see, what type of players come from console. Like, are there gonna be any insane, controller scrimmers that are just gonna come in and dominate? Do you think, or is it just gonna be for the most part, it's gonna be an absolute slide from PC. Like, PC is just gonna roll them.
I don't think it'll change too much. I'm sure there will be some teams that come over from console that are pretty highly skilled and competitive with the PC players. But I think at this point, a lot of the console players that wanted to, that were highly competitive, have already switched over. Like if you have the drive to compete, you would have already switched over.
Yeah, yeah, for
The only
sure.
limiting factor being like
Well,
finances if you're young or whatever.
yeah, I was gonna say finances are actually a pretty big factor. Not even just if you're young, but there's people who are in their adulthood, but maybe they haven't gotten fully settled into a career yet, but they're still living on their own, right? And rent is tight, and bills are tight, and a console's just a lot more accessible price range wise than an actual gaming PC for the most part. Certainly one at a competitive level, anyways. Um,
Right.
so the price point of consoles being on average around $500-600, not barring, of course, the whole fiasco with scalpers and all of that, you know. Um, but the price point being that much lower, you know, your average gaming PC's 1,200 to 2 grand, somewhere in that
Mm,
range.
depending
So,
on like what parts you get as well. Like
hmm
you, if you go for just like a base build that will be able to play, maybe at like 70, 80, possibly 90 FPS, you're looking at maybe a $900 to $1,000 PC right there. But
Yep.
if you want to like stream, if you want to do any of that stuff, you're looking at 1,500 to 2 grand
Few
easily.
grand. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, definitely 2 grand. I mean, I even know, like mine, I can stream on it, but I have to run lower settings, and it was, I mean, it's a little older now, but it was over 2 grand when it was built.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Plus,
and
right now,
it's,
graphics cards are stupid expensive.
well,
absolutely
that's
insane.
true too. But that brings back the point of there might be people who are interested in competing in the ALGS that will take advantage of this console announcement. Not that it hasn't had its own concerns, you know, but I
Yeah,
think the point four does help. Um, I think people were concerned with integrity with strike packs, though, which
I I've
Yeah,
seen
I
a
was
bunch
just
of
gonna
that, and
talk about that too. Yeah.
it's gonna be interesting because you know there's even people on PC who play on controller that were presumably strike packing in the competitive scene. You know what I mean?
yeah, and
And
that's a good point. And how easy is it to detect? I don't know if you know the answer to this while you're on that
It's
roll,
not
Koala.
easy. It's
I
not
don't
easy.
think it's easy at all. I think that like
In fact, it's virtually impossible to detect strike packs because it mimics hardware input.
exactly. I don't it's one of those things that's like if it's so hard to detect, then the only way to really stop it from competing would be a LAN. And like
Mm,
then let's say hypothetically a console team makes it to LAN. Are they gonna go to LAN and play on a console? I think they'll be playing on a PC. So already they're gonna have that. They're not used to playing on, either more FPS or this, that, the other. And I think they'll struggle on LAN if they do eventually make it.
it could be.
Yeah, and I think that'll be the case maybe for like the first couple of lands, but once the players that are really dedicated to playing competitively have a few tournaments on their belt, I think there'll be more even playing field in that regard.
I think the thing too there, though, yeah, they make it to land, but did they make it there with a strike pack? And that brings back the integrity question, right? I mean,
Yeah,
even if they make it there and then they get washed because they are no longer using that advantage, um, you know, how many teams got pushed out that maybe could have made it or should have made it because of the unfair advantage, right? And I don't think people realize just how common and accessible strike packs really are. I mean, you have to download some sketchy stuff to make them work, right? But from my understanding, anyways. But I mean, GameStop is selling them for under $40,
And
and
advertising
and they
it.
advertise Apex Legends in their sale for strike packs. They've got videos of
They do.
people using them, and it literally says things like anti-recoil in the advertisement. So they know they're basically selling a cheat, right? But nothing's done about it. And I don't know how much can be done, frankly, because it's kind of such a gray area. There's no rule set around it yet. And I think that's why people are concerned with the integrity of console being included because it's not that the controller player on PC can't use them, right? It's just much more prevalent in the
In
console scene.
console. Yeah. Yeah. And with that volume of controllers moving over, it's bound to have a higher number of strike pack users
Mhm.
also, just by
Just in
virtue of
general.
volume.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's kind of tough. It's actually really tough to deal with, especially when Apex is in a point where cheaters are kind of running the game. Like, how many people do you see just not even playing ranked anymore? And it's like, how do you
Yeah.
justify bringing that into like a competitive, controlled competitive scene?
Well, I mean, this might be like a hot take. We're starting the hot takes early.
Hot take. Let's go.
But
Nice. Let's go.
I mean, if you look at like, let's say the recent Apex patch, right? All the Apex professional players are complaining about Bloodhound being a, you know, information character where you literally get wall hacks, right? What do? They add Seer, another wall hack character. The butterflies or whatever go and scan people through the walls. I know we haven't seen them like fully yet. This is probably like completely misunderstood, but like, we complain about an LMG completely ruining the meta. Spitfire, right? What do? They add another LMG that does 28 body damage. It's like 43
They added
headshot
a
damage.
they added
I
a
don't.
wingman. Let's be honest.
I just,
Well, I think though, couple things. First, there was a tweet from a Respawn developer that stated that Seer's ability, while it will go through walls, it's not a cone. It's not going to get like a wide
yes.
area. It's like a targeted location.
Did either of you watch the gameplay trailer, the Sierra's gameplay trailer?
I did
Uh,
not.
It came out
no,
today, I think.
I know. I probably should have done
So
that in advance of this.
in the trailer, they show Seer ADSing, and there's literally arrows pointing to where the enemies are in his sight.
So I think I read the same tweet that Mari said. It was talking about. They said that like Seer's silence, another thing that we've been complaining about, right? Revenant silence,
Yeah,
terrible, whatever. Seer's quote unquote silence or to stop res or healing only lasts for a second. It's more or less to
It's like an interrupt.
yeah, it's more like an interrupt to say like nope, no battery for you type of deal, I think.
yeah,
But
and like I get how that can be. I don't know. I can see that being just an absolute pain. Just imagine you're like 3/4 of the way through a battery and you get hit with a Seer Q. Like, you're screwed.
and then you're
And
just like, well, that's unlucky.
it's unlucky. And like, what if that Seer is a third party? Like, and it's gonna be. They're gonna be Octane searing into you
They're gonna octane Seer
every
rev
time. Every
Yeah.
every
time.
time.
Well, I mean, it is what it is, though, right? And
Yeah.
competitors that want to take part in the ALGS are going to have to deal with these meta shifts. It's just the reality of it. Like,
Yeah.
you can complain till you're blue in the face about it, but at the end of the day, you either adapt to it or you're the one sitting out watching people in the finals.
Or you
You know,
retire, become a coach,
Right.
and host a podcast.
that's true too.
Hey.
But I mean, even we briefly mentioned like my old team made it, right? Well, we
Yeah.
used Caustic. I think we were the only team in NA. Certainly the only one that made it to the finals, but I think even the
Right.
only one that made it to semis using Caustic
Was
at that
that the
point.
was that the point when a EU had started using Caustic
I think EU had
already?
started doing it in the
Yeah.
same ALGS that we did. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, we honestly, frankly, we were doing it because people were kind of aping lower level rounds, so like quarters and like the round of 160.
Yeah.
And we just wanted Watson and Caustic so people would stop aping us. That's literally why we did it. But no one knew how to counter it because they weren't used to it, right? And I think in talking about ALGS, there's a lot of complaint about meta shifting from the pros, but at the end of the day, we knocked out several pro teams just because we tried something new, you know,
Yeah.
and no one knew how to play
Yeah.
against it. And I think with Seer coming in to this ALGS, all of these people that compete at a high level are going to have to adapt.
100%. I mean,
A
there
good
was a
point.
time
Go for
when
it.
I competed. I think it was like maybe a full ALGS before the one that you guys made to the finals. With Gobble and Yo-Yo, where we played Caustic for like a week. And that week we were absolutely like a menace on NA scrims, right? We were, playing super aggressive Caustic, and if you were sitting in a building, we'd throw one trap, it'd instantly pop, and you could do nothing about it. We took your building. And, the team didn't exactly work out for whatever reason, but, that the fact that there's so much untapped potential with these characters that could, completely shift the meta, in my opinion. It's
Yeah, absolutely.
it's kind of crazy.
It is crazy. And I think what I was going to say is still relevant, and I think that that's a problem with NA in general, is the general inflexibility of comp. You see like a vast majority of teams playing the same three legends,
Yeah.
whereas like EU and APAC, they're always playing different stuff. They're trying new things out in competitive environments, and I think that that's going to be a really huge benefit when lands come around, or when cross-regional lands come around.
That being said, though, I feel like NA has a really, really, really aggressive playstyle, right? Like if you watch an NA tournament, there are teams that will like solely base their majority of the points in the tournament off of kills. And the only way to stop them from just completely aping and running your team is with a Gibby. So Gibby is like a must have, right? And at that point, you have to have a movement character, a mobility character, which is why, Wraith or Octane is just an absolute necessity. And then it's like that third character, well, if you need to go port out quick or you need to find somewhere to go, that Bloodhound scan is needed as well. Like
it is and it isn't though. I think there's, for starters, there are a lot of teams that do get a lot of kills, but that also has rarely worked out into the favor of the teams that actually win overall, right?
yeah.
Though they might consistently make finals, like think about how many times Complexity was advancing through on kill points, but it didn't always net them the highest placement. They did have a really good ALGS run um, a bit ago, but it didn't always net them that highest placement, right? Because a lot of
Yeah.
teams were able to punish that. And I think from the standpoint of your average viewer, the thing to understand is that, yeah, these teams are looking awesome running around killing all these people, but all those other teams are just as skilled too, and they will punish you for playing like that. If you're caught out of position, if you're caught in an open field, you're going to get blasted because they can all aim just as well. So, but it'll be interesting to see, if people will shake that meta up. I think especially now, kind of tying this back into the announcement of ALGS with the restriction of one squad per org. Um, I think that's going to
Yeah.
make getting an org a little bit more competitive, and I think people might be willing to take more risks to try to get that advantage and get that one up so that they can perform better and get onto an org spot because you know energy could have had 5 squads before, right? And so
Mhm.
it's not quite as competitive from the player standpoint, you know.
Right.
Well,
For
that's
example,
something.
Congarna.
Yeah, Congarna's a good example there as well. One EU team, one NA team. The EU team performed very well and has been performing very well and consistently, but the NA team just won, the ALGS, yeah, just won
Mhm.
finals over here.
The champs, yeah.
So it's like, how do you decide which team to keep? I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see how that goes about, and based off that, are they gonna be requiring all three teammates to be assigned to the same org? And if that happens, how is, Abruleli going to compete with C9? Is he going to, leave TSM? Is that not going to work? Is
Mhm.
Nox going to come back? I don't know what's going to happen, but it's one of those things that's like, how much will this affect it?
I think it's good overall, though. In the long term, I think the timing of it's a little bit weird, but I think the way they design ALGS, they didn't have a choice except to implement it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, kind of it's a little weird, but at the same time, when else would you implement it? Between LGS seasons is the real
right, and
time when you could.
that's why I think they had to implement it now is because it's between seasons and the seasons run for such a long period of time.
Right.
But I
Yeah, because
think,
this one ends in what, like June of next year or something? In July? Yeah, July of next year.
yeah, it's like almost a year long. It's like 8 or 9 months long type of ordeal when you count in registration and the time,
Oop,
you know,
excuse me.
all
Yeah.
dedicated to it. Um, but at the end of the day, right, this change only really serves to hurt players, but everybody else benefits. Orgs overall benefit from it, because then smaller orgs, up and coming orgs, can actually go for a competitive roster instead of seeing a giant org with a ton of money to throw around just signing 5 of the best
All the
teams.
teams, yeah.
Yeah. So it benefits orgs in that regard. It makes it so that player contracts and buyouts are more competitive. Um, it's, overall better for sponsorship too. And kind of using Abralele as an example again, if he's hypothetically sponsored by Cheetos and C9 is sponsored by Cheez-Its and they want a Cheetos sponsorship, why would Cheetos ever give it to them? Because Alb's already playing on their team. They're already
Yeah.
getting free advertisement, right? So their Cheetos is double dipping. They've got TSM and
Right.
they've got C9 now. So from a sponsorship standpoint, it's better for
It's a 2
orgs
for
that way
1.
too. Yeah. Um, but I think there's a lot of drama around the Alb thing too with C9, and I think
Well,
this change will kind of prevent things like that from happening in the first place. Because roster changes are common anyways. You compare esports to real sports, right? Player trades in hockey, player trades in football. That stuff happens frequently. It's just part of the job.
I
But
think that
go ahead.
something that a
Sorry.
lot of people like don't understand, whether that's in the casual community or people who haven't competed at a high level. It's like, yes, what happened was kind of unfortunate, whatever, right? But at the end of the day, it's what happens. You know what I mean? It's a job,
Mhm.
and if you think that you will have better, I guess, standings with, let's say, a different like a different member on your team or a different person doing that job, then you're more likely to take it, right? And you know as much as like Noct got screwed over, blah 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 blah, it's like I'm sure he understands, like it's part of the game, it's what happens.
Yeah, that's true, and that's kind of, as I said, when you compare it to, like, let's just even I'll just use hockey as an example because I know more about it than any other sport. Player trades happen all the time leading up to the playoffs, right? Especially between seasons, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's when teams are developing, shifting players around, and I think this regulation with team limits um, is really going to just cut all of the drama out of that, because now player trades are still going to happen. That's not going to change, right? But it's going to be because of their contracts and an org maybe buying out a player or something. And so there's not going to be that personal drama attached to it anymore. It's not, well, Albert Lele did this to
Well, I
Knox or vice
disagree.
versa, you know, because it's not going to be their choice as much anymore, just like a real contract in sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't agree, Zoro?
No, I think that esports is too young for that. I think that those kind of trades are still going to happen because all it is doing is limiting the number of teams that one org can field. It's not limiting the number of teams that can play. And so there's going to be a lot more, in my opinion, free agent teams, which is going to make it more prevalent than less, in my opinion. Because the number of orgs is going up slowly in Apex, just not nearly as fast as it will go down with this change. At least
That's
that's my
true.
opinion.
But when you look at it, think about again. I'm just going to default to hockey again, and I'm going to use, and no particular reason for this team, not because I think it's the best team or anything, but let's say the Pittsburgh Penguins, for no particular reason, of
For
course.
no particular reason, obviously.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
if a player is traded from the Penguins, let's just say to the New York Islanders, right? Um, People are going to know about it because they're following those teams. And it's the same thing, like C9 and TSM are both massive orgs, right? And so
Right.
people know about it. It's more prominent. But if you said free agent team A swapped a player with free agent team B, it's not going to get as much attention from people that aren't heavily invested in the scene already, right?
I think
Like,
the big issue with the whole Alberelli and Nox situation was that Cloud9 just got second in a champs tournament you know, they just got signed to Cloud9. They were fresh. They were ready to go. And it's like pretty much a week later, you know, they have a new teammate. It's somebody who is already competing with a different team. And it's like, I think that's why a lot of the people reacted the way they did, because it happened so fast and it was almost like a blink of an eye. And like all the work that Cloud9's team, quote unquote, like, you know, they put in to get signed and make it to finals and champs is just out the window with, you know, a roster change at that point. And, you know, nothing against Mac, but I think that him saying that he wanted to take a break and then announcing that he's going to compete with a different team.
Stuck to me.
Yeah. I mean, I understand why, right? Like, if he was going to take a break and then somebody DM'd him with a better opportunity, of course you're going to take that, right? And you're not thinking about the people involved or anything like that. And, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I love Mac. I love Alb. Dude is absolutely insane player. Arguably one of the best mechanically, right? He deserves to be at the top with whatever team he can, you know, can compete with. And I just think people were caught off guard by him saying, hey guys, I'm going to take a little break from Apex. You know, it's not really working out for me. And then right after saying, oh, I guess I'm going to compete with Cloud9 and
yeah, within like very,
yeah.
The thing is, so he had been hinting, like, it wasn't as fast as it seemed like. Like, he had been talking about taking a break for a while. Anyone that actually was, like,
I mean, yeah.
in his stream knew.
Well, yeah, but that even strengthens the point.
Well, it doesn't, because I think what's the part that's missing from people that haven't competed, especially at that level, and I honestly, like, wouldn't even put myself in that spot, even though, like, I competed for a while and did make the finals, like, it's not the same thing as what he's going through. Like, and nobody, like, just because you've competed once, even if you've made finals once, that doesn't compare to the amount of pressure and the amount of spotlight that is on someone like Alberlele, that is on someone like Zach, right? Like, these tier one teams, it's, again, I'm just to liken it to hockey. Like, if you're watching the Stanley Cup finals, that's basically the ALGS, you know, grand finals, right? They're under such an enormous spotlight and under such immense pressure. And you have to understand that these people, they're on average, anyways, younger, right? This is
Right.
their career that they started out of high school, during high school, out of college. You know, maturity goes a long way in life when it comes to handling pressure, and you don't have time to really develop that. And this isn't, I don't want to say that being young's a problem. I'm not trying to go down that road at all. What I'm saying though is, like, you could be just your average high school student, right? Nothing special. You happen to get good at a game, all of a sudden you're signed, and now you're on stage with the spotlight on you, with hundreds of thousands of people's with opinions on you. You know what I mean? Like, it's a huge jump that you just don't have time in life to prepare for. And everyone's going to process that and handle it differently, you
Yeah.
know? And I think that's something that kind of gets left out of all of the opinions on the Alberlele and Noct thing, is not realizing that, yeah, hey, they're pros, but they're human too. And they were literally just tossed into a scene with a ton of pressure and whatnot on them. Like, Snipe Down might be um, an exception to that because he's competed before. Like, this isn't his first scene, right?
Well,
But to
yeah,
anyone coming
that
into Apex and it's their first scene, or the first scene that they really got recognized in, it's going to be a new experience for them too.
I think with Snipe Down specifically that, you know, like you said, this isn't the first time he's competed. So he's had time to kind of learn and kind of figure out how to deal with that pressure you were talking about, where, you know, he no longer either, you know, cares what other people think or blah blah blah. He deals with it in his own way. And, you know, that's something that you don't see out of, you know, people who are competing for the first time. This is the first game they're competing in. This is the first time they've ever had, you know, this amount of, lack of a better word, clout, right? This many eyes on them at one time to, you know, deciding their every move or judging their every move per se. And I think you're 100% right with that. I think that I feel like that's something in the gaming community or the gaming scene that a lot of people look over, is that everybody is human, right? Look at even the devs, right? Or transferring to a different whole topic, but you know, people sit there and curse out devs for not putting updates out. They sit there and be like, you guys are absolutely lazy, blah blah blah. We hate you. Why don't you do this? But it's like, it's only their job at the end of the day, right? They still have a life outside of their job. They still have, stuff going on in their life that could hinder them from doing,
they're also
that stuff.
they're also just employees, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're at the end of the day, they're not really the main decision makers. Like, some of them are, like the lead designers and lead balancers and so on. They have a say, but at the end of the day, they have to answer to EA and EA management. And I know that some of the devs have said that EA lets them have lets Respawn have a pretty wide berth in terms of what they want to do with the game. But I mean, again, Respawn management is still kind of the level above the developers, and that's something that people, I think, fail to take into account as well.
Well, frankly, this is really off topic too, so I'll make this short so we can get back on topic, because this was about the LGS announcement originally.
No, don't worry about it.
Frankly, anonymity just has a part to play in that too. People take out their frustrations in unhealthy ways on the internet because they think that they can, and people won't find out who they are for the most part. I mean, look at most of the hot takes are really toxic things are being said by Steve12345. It's obviously not a real account, right? So, like,
Somebody's
think
got their
about
burner in full
people.
effect.
Yeah, and think about people like Ellie Newlands, that's the voice actor for Horizon. Like, she posts stuff up about Apex all the time. She's excited about it. Super nice person, super amazing personality. She's always like, her content's phenomenal. It's always super wholesome. But you still get people bashing her, like the state of the game's her fault. Like, she's not even
Yeah.
a developer, you know what I mean? She's literally not even
Yeah.
a developer, but she still gets flack for it. And I think it's that toxic anonymity that comes with being online that just allows that to occur. And there's not really a good solution to it. If there is, I don't know what
Well,
it is. But
it's not simple. There's whole behavioral science fields developed or designated to studying online conduct and stuff like that. It's a whole field. There's no easy solution.
And I feel like it's not just Horizon's voice actor. I feel like it's all the voice actors that like, I guess, make content publicly, or I guess, like, I see a lot of the Lifeline voice actor. I don't know her name exactly, but every time I see her on my TikTok or my Twitter or whatever, it's the exact same thing. Everybody's just saying, Lifeline's in a terrible state in Apex Legends. When is she getting a buff? It's like, all she did, all she did was, like, get the voice lines and voice act for this in-game character, and you're expecting her to be able to make balancing changes and give you an heirloom. Like, that just doesn't make sense. And I'll never understand it. In all reality, it's insane to me.
No, I completely agree with you. I don't know. There's a lot of times where misplaced blame finds its way onto whoever, and, like, this is going to be a kind of a sharp right turn, but I know that Battlecord or T1 Apex got a lot of flack sometimes for things that we couldn't control. Also, when we used to host scrims, and even now, I know we still get people in the Discord being like, "Hey, how do I get this fixed in the game?" And I'm like, "I don't know, man.
yeah,
Contact EA help."
we literally have EA help website spammed all over our server. Because people will just come to us and say, "Hey, I got banned in game." It's like, great, you're getting banned here now too, because we don't want cheaters in our Discord. It's people think for some reason, and I know that the main Play Apex Discord gets us too. I know the mods deal with it there too, because we've talked extensively just in the past, just working together on different things and just kind of being a general community, community
Right.
leaders. They deal with it too, right? For whatever reason, people think these discords are support, And what it boils down to is they're not getting the results they want quick enough, right?
Right.
They don't want to go through the help website because then they have to wait for a response and they might not get the response they like. So then they take to other social media, Discord, Reddit, Twitter, and complain and groan,
Hmm.
hoping to get the attention of someone that's going to give them what they want. And sometimes it works. Like we just saw that situation on Reddit not long ago where somebody posted up a complaint about getting banned for something that wouldn't really be permanent ban worthy, like maybe a suspension at most, right? And then the developer looked into it and they were actually banned for saying homophobic slurs, you know?
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's just the reality of it. I mean, I can't count the number of times where people have come into our Discord saying, "Well, hey, we're trying to get a hold of EA or Respawn. Can you unban my account? I got banned for no reason." And then I've humored a few of them when they open mod mail tickets. Well, what did you do to get yourself banned? Like I was playing with this guy and I didn't know he was cheating. So okay, well,
Clearly, you
yeah,
did at that
you
point.
played with him the whole way up to masters and you didn't know he was cheating. Sure, okay, you got boosted, right? Or whatever the case may be. And yeah, that misplaced blame happens a lot. Kind of coming full circle on that. And I think that kind of, not to veer off of your right turn onto that side of things, because I know that's one of the topics we were starting to dabble into as well. But I think that misplaced blame comes back a lot with the C9 and Liquid thing, and Noct and Albin, TSM, and that all playing together. Like there are bystanders in that situation that were just getting absolutely roasted for something that ultimately was just a couple people's decision. And I don't know.
I
Again,
think
it's that anonymity on the internet. People can say whatever they want or feel like they can say whatever they want with limited repercussion.
I feel like another good example of, I guess, people, looking for, like, instead of taking the time to go through AA help or whatever it is. You remember a long time ago when Lulu got a cheater banned live on stream
Hmm.
because she said this guy's cheating and Hideouts banned him. And then that person who was banned was a bloodhound, and he went to Reddit and was like, I was banned because Lulu told a
Lulu
dev
said
to
I was
ban
cheating.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like all the entire, casual Apex community started sending like death threats and everything to Lulu, who all she did was said that this person could be cheating, right? She had nothing to do outside of that. And, she was getting death threats. She was like, I don't want to stream, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, then Respawn just came out and full said, no, he was cheating. Here's the proof. And went, he said, Lulu was 100% right. And Hideouts banned him because he had proof of him cheating. And then, that Bloodhound just kind of shut up, and the whole casual community kind of shut up. They didn't say sorry.
They,
They didn't
yeah.
hold him accountable or anything like that. It's like they get this riot mentality almost, to where it's like,
Hmm.
Well, it's the anonymity thing again. Like they feel like they
yeah,
can't do that because no one knows really who anyone is. It's just you're just a name on a screen. You have no accountability for what you're saying or doing.
Well, and it's also part of just culture right now in general. People want to rally behind a cause, and there are definitely good causes to rally behind, but that mentality's still there, rally behind cause, right? And that's just society as a whole. So what ends up happening here is now people don't necessarily feel empowered in their daily lives, but they have a voice on Reddit, they have a voice on Discord, and they have a voice on Twitter. And some people use that to do good, and some people spread positive messages and messages that support underprivileged people. And some people use that anonymity and platform that they have to spread toxicness that they can't get out in their real life. Maybe they're having a really bad year at work. Maybe their marriage just fell apart, whatever, and they don't have an outlet for it. So now all of a sudden, the same platform that can be used for so much good is used as a negative outlet. And here now, Lulu and Hideouts get all those threats and whatnot. And it's always death threats too, right? I mean, I see
mm-hmm.
this all the time. This happened back And this is for real old folk in the scene. But there was a period of time where Tech, his team, contested TSM in Capital City, and or Fragment. It may have been at the time. It was East Frag
That's
and
not
West
even that
Frag.
old. That was like right before Champs,
Yeah,
you
that wasn't
weirdo.
that or that was literally
No,
like
that was a lot longer ago than you think it is.
that was probably what 6 months ago maybe. I
Not
don't think
even.
it was,
Yeah, maybe 6 months.
no, because I think it
No,
was 2 ALGSs back.
it was
And
a while ago.
boomer memories just melted all together.
No. It was. I'm not saying it was like ancient history. I'm just saying it's a lot longer ago in the life of the game,
It
right?
was
Than current
Frag
events.
East, and they contested TSM, and this was when TSM was on what, a 5-win streak, like they won 5
5-win
tournaments in a
streak.
row. This
Yeah,
would
they
have been their
contested
6th. They were in the
TSM
lead.
every game.
Right.
Tech contested
Anyways,
them, griefed them,
the
whatever you want to say, and that's in
and
reality, it could be a smart game plan, right? Contesting someone, um, for a drop spot or whatever, in theory, is a or not a good idea, but it can be a good game plan.
It's like
To some extent.
saying you're playing the long con, you know, because if you contest them for an entire tournament, the fear is that you're going to do it in the next tournament, so maybe you get the landing spot the next like 3 tournaments or whatever. And so it can be a valid game strategy, just not for that tournament.
But
maybe.
You know,
I mean, there's a lot of layers to that, and that's not where I was going with this, anyways. But my point was, back then, when that happened, a lot of people that were fans of TSM were enraged, and I just kind of bringing this back to it was T1 Apex at the time. We hadn't become Battlecord yet. There were death threats in our general chat of people tagging Tech, saying you shouldn't have done that, you're a dead man, and like stuff like that. That's a quote, by the way, please don't hurt me. um that's literally a quote from somebody that I had to
yeah,
ban from the server. And you know like, people, again, it's this weird hive mentality where people just get outraged on behalf of somebody else, a lot of times for the wrong reason. And it's kind of ridiculous, but
you know,
anyways.
I'm just gonna go ahead and say, if Tech didn't contest TSM would still be on top right now, winning every single tournament.
Mhm.
Absolutely, no
Absolutely.
shot. Nothing else changes. It's all Tech's fault. No, I'm just kidding. In reality, like,
My head's not big enough for that size cap.
wow, that's crazy. I mean, I don't
I
know.
work put that under hot take number 2 column.
Yeah, there you go. Hot take number 2. I like it.
I mean,
But
there's a lot of things in the
yeah,
Apex community that, like, if one thing changed, it I feel like would have that, snowball effect or whatever, where it could
would bring on the
drastically
TV.
change, the outcome of how Apex worked. And for
Mhm.
example, what if tier 1 Apex wasn't a thing? What if the scrims back then wasn't a thing? What if GLL never hosted scrims and it was still up to just the public eye to keep scrims going? Who would be in charge of that? Obviously Battlecord. Just saying. And it's like, how would that have affected the, I guess, competitive integrity of, at least in my opinion, NA, right? Because NNA,
Right.
we'd never see anybody scrim anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to that. That's an interesting topic to bring up, because there's a lot of layers to that. Especially, like, I know Zoro worked with me in T1 and now Battlecord for a long time, and then, as I said, I was there the day the server was made. Actually, within like an hour, is in the first like 100 people in there, because it was actually funny. So before T1 was a server called Apex.pro.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I
And
I
remember
was there
that.
for that.
there was a management disagreement, we'll say, among the people that were running that.
That was a
So,
good diplomatic way to put that.
yep, and it's going to stay that way while I'm on public record. So there was a management disagreement. It really boiled down to money, right? Part of the crew wanted to monetize it. The other part didn't want to monetize it. They wanted to keep it free, and volunteer. And that was really one of the biggest things. There's obviously layers to that too, but that's not my place to discuss. Certainly not here. So, uh, anyways, T1 Apex was born. Um, and at the time it was Q snipes, right? I think
It
for people
was,
that
yeah.
have joined since ALGS has begun, they haven't played the game in a period of time where custom lobbies and custom codes didn't exist, but that's what it was back then. Everyone got on the same server. I know for T1 we
Iowa
specifically used Iowa
GCE2.
GCE2 or 4 a lot. Um, those were very popular. We used Dallas a lot too because it's central. We tried to keep it central when we could, um, barring tech issues. And then for EU, it was always London or Amsterdam. Um, but it was a different era, right? There was no competition outside of there was like X Games and there was the Poland Invitational, and then there was a couple of like one-off type of kill race events. Um, but overall, all there was Q snipes, and
Yeah.
so I think, and this is kind of going to bring up a little hot topic that I'll try to stay away from, but skill based matchmaking has actually been in the game for quite some time too, and that's how these Q snipes worked. Um, is because of skill based matchmaking. It's always existed. Um, it just became a more recent complaint, by frankly, mostly by content creators that want to farm noobs. Um, and I get it. I do get it. Ranked exists for a reason, competitive exists for a reason. I shouldn't have to try hard all the time. If I just want to relax, I should be able to. But that's a whole nother topic.
I mean,
Um,
the back when the Q snipe days,
mhm,
there was no ranked. You know what I mean? The entirety of Q snipe competitive was solely based off of, passion for the game. And
mhm,
I think that's something that is different now. You know what I mean? You have these players that are insanely good at the game, but don't really have any passion to continue competing. And that's where that whole skill based matchmaking complaint comes in. Because they just want to not say get easy content, but they don't want to sit there and try their absolute hardest
They
to
don't want to sweat 8 hours a day if they don't want
yeah
to.
to
right.
stream on Twitch. And it's like that I think that has a big part in, the lack of, I guess, scrim commitment and the lack of everything from at least the NA point is like just
Mm,
the lack of passion almost.
I agree and I disagree with that. A passion is definitely a factor, and I think that's always going to be um, a factor in any competitive setting, frankly, especially when you're looking at the development of it, right? Because that's what this was. The Q Snipe scrims were early development, and then you got into customs, and those were scrims, and that was still early development. Then you got ALGS, and everyone was excited because it was new. The newness is gone now.
Yeah.
It's old news. So you're always going to have people that burn out or people that don't make it and they need to focus on other things in life. I think that part's true. But I think how that ties in, I think it's about opportunity too, in a way. Before with Q Snipes, it was open. Anyone could get in, anyone could show up, sign up, jump in. There wasn't even really a sign up, at least when we were running it through T1, we had a bot that you would create a team through the bot and register your players, and then you would do the Q snipe, right? And it was the last five
Last
letters
past 5 letters of the champion's
of the
name.
champion's name, and that's how the bot knew what lobby you were in, and it would count. So if there was too many, it wouldn't give you too many points. Like if 21 people put it in, obviously there's only 20 teams per lobby. Um, you know, so it would count and keep track. And the thing is, right there, that's all there was. There was no other opportunity to compete outside of those Q snipes. Um,
And
and we
then
had a scoring system, and I think what a lot of people probably don't know, because most people wouldn't have had access to it, other than the people that really competed and tried. But there was a private server as well.
yo, I was just about to say that if you, performed really well in the open or the public, like Q snipes,
Private queues.
you could get private queues, and that was like one of those things where that really separated, and I guess that was a clear path on how to compete at a higher level, right? Which is
Yeah.
something I feel like is missing now.
That's true. I agree completely. It is missing now. And I think that's where the passion died, kind of coming back to that. I think right there is the perfect example of why people's passion may have died because it feels like there's a wall in front of them. And so before, when we did it that way, there was a clear path forward and there was a prize at the end of it. And I think still some of that was still the newness and the excitement of the game too. Um, I think some of that was still a factor, but at the end of the day, yeah, if you became the top 2 or whatever that placed in the NA or EU scrims, you got invited to private Apex, and that was filled with basically it was just the admins. So it was just me, Bozy, typical,
Swirl.
Swirly,
Yeah.
and Gnostics, and then Battalion, and
And
that
then
was
only
filled with
players after
all of
that.
the pros. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was filled with CLG and TSM, and throw your 3-letter acronym out there. They were in there, right? And then it was filled with the top placing tier 2 teams, basically the ones that could compete up through our ladder system and get the invite. And it was a clear path forward. And then I remember GLL hosted a kill race and a lot of people took part in it, and there was a lot of I'm going to use the term mixed reviews.
Controversy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mixed reviews on that, and I think kill races are always tough for competition, anyways. To be honest, if you really want fair competition, kill races just have far too many variables. They just do.
Way
Did you get
too
an easier
RNG.
lobby? Is there too much RNG? Right? Is someone playing on a server they're not supposed to? Is a team more stacked than another one for that type of gameplay? Like
Well, I've
it's
also seen people like tank their games before the tournament to get better MMR or SPMM for the
I
yeah,
mean,
kill
that's true
race.
too.
I will say that I know some people who did that, know them very well. And GLL at the time in the rule set didn't say that you couldn't use an alt. They just said you have to be over level 100 or whatever it was, and you had to, have a certain amount of hours played on the account. Well, they didn't say that you could go on an account that was, let's say, level 50 with a 5 KD, for example, and sit there and drop and die every single game until you're level 100. So you have like a point 8 KD at that point to get easier lobbies. They didn't say you couldn't do that. And there were people that went to do that, and then I think right before the actual kill race event, GLO was like, no, sorry, you can't do that. But that's what happened. That's what people did to get
Yeah.
easier lobbies, and
hmm
I think
Well, there was a bug too, and not for the
Oh
GLL
yeah, I
tournament, but there was
remember
a
that.
bug that I think a lot of people may not have taken
Get into
advantage of
bot
or known
lobbies.
about too to get into bot lobbies. And this was when custom codes were being alpha tested still.
yo,
And even when they got to beta, it didn't get
That bug
fixed until
lasted a
full
while,
release. Yeah, it
right?
lasted a
Yeah.
while. But if you went into a custom lobby, your first game back, your MMR was completely reset to default, and you would literally be playing with brand new players. So a lot of people would go do scrims or
not
go
play.
test customs,
Yeah,
and then they would either not play and get a bot lobby for a kill race, or they would use it to go get their badges. Right? They would use it to go get their 20 kill badge or their 4K badge or their 10-10-10 with their team.
or their
Um,
30 kill flex on Twitter, even saying that
yeah,
they got a 30
and
bomb.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that happened. It would last for like 2 to 3 games before your MMR was reset, so you could just go and ruin some kids' days, And yeah, it was an interesting times before what scrims looked like in more recent history when GLL took over. They actually got a deal, I think, some sort of deal. I don't really know much about it, and it's not my place to know about it in detail,
Well,
anyways.
they're
But
not doing it anymore anyway.
no, so well,
At least not
sort
that I
of.
know of.
Yeah, that's
They do GL cups, and I haven't seen any scrims.
yeah, that's something that I can't fully answer. Whether or not I know is irrelevant. If you catch my drift.
Hmm.
Um, but
Yeah.
So
yeah, for a while, anyways, I think the passion with scrims, kind of getting back to that topic, the passion there was that there was a clear path forward, and it was exciting and new, And then there was a controversy with the kill race with GLL. And then they took over um, with that deal when customs came out. And there was a lot of layers to that too. In fact, actually, T1 through Private Apex with the pros helped test custom codes when they were new.
Yeah,
Bug test the
we did
score
do that.
sheets, etc.
Mm.
And we worked directly with EA on that. And then I know it wasn't just us. EA worked with a couple of other tournament hosts as well, GLL being one of them, with customs. And I think the biggest thing is at the time, GLL had a website to facilitate it, right? They had a website to facilitate scrims, which is probably one of the biggest draws.
And
Um,
previous experience with PUBG.
right. And they have history. Exactly. So they get the deal.
Which,
And
interestingly enough, was very positive history.
it was
Eh,
mostly.
I mean,
Mostly.
it was.
It was.
I
I
mean,
mean, everyone that I talked to said that GL did a good job in PUBG and absolutely just kind of screwed up in Apex.
I've heard the exact opposite from people
Really?
who have competed in PUBG and went farther into I guess the gaming scene. Not gonna name any names, not gonna name any, credentials, but there's people who are,
I guess I'll just
say
believe you. You
that
know.
PUBG was, an absolute mess, and that they were seeing the same thing happen with Apex. And that's a hot topic, and I might get some flame for that, but personally, I don't know. I feel like when they got that private deal, that it was really 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 messy and not very organized at this beginning, and I still feel like it's not very organized to the point of people are signing up for scrims for the first time ever, and they're getting in the quote unquote high tier lobby, right? And I know that
Right.
if they're just doing GLL cups now, that doesn't really
Matter.
happen anymore. But last time
But
I
at the
scrimmed,
time,
it
yeah.
was you had this quote unquote MMR that nobody knew about except GLL, and if you are signing up for
Actually,
the first time, you have SS rank elo, so you're automatically in the top tier of the server, the game.
Yes and no. It wasn't quite that sloppy. It wasn't good,
that
but
bad. They did
it
have
wasn't
a
that bad. They
spreadsheet
did have
with
a
Well,
points and
spreadsheet.
they didn't
historical
Yeah.
record.
release that
Yeah.
they didn't release the
Yes, they
spreadsheet
did.
publicly. They did.
Yeah.
It's
I
on
didn't
their
see it
website
for.
for every turn. Yeah.
Gotcha. I mean,
Every
like at
it
the
has.
start though.
Well, no, I think the disconnect wasn't necessarily. But there was a couple of disconnects, and it was there was layers to it, right? First and foremost, the pros wanted exclusive scrims. That's something that they
Understandably.
lost when Private Apex went away,
Yeah.
right? Um, and I get that because the pros are going to be playing the pros in the finals. And eventually that did happen for them, right? Eventually, GLL permitted lobbies specific to the teams that qualified with filler slots for other high tier teams. But it wasn't like that at the start. So there was a lot of frustration around that, I think, from the pros' perspective. And for other people's perspective, on the low end, there were so many intricate rules that it was jarring for anybody that had been in the scene doing Q snipes. It was very jarring because people would get banned or suspended or put in low tier lobbies
Hi there.
for disagreeing with an admin or
Hi.
saying I don't like how this is running. Like they would just boom, okay, well screw you, you're out, and it's like the I'm not going to say that we never barred people from scrims either because we did with T1 and the Q snipes, but there was usually a pretty good reason for it. Like they were caught boosting or they were cheating or they were saying things that were highly inappropriate. You know what I mean? Um,
It wasn't, hey, I don't like the way this is ran. Maybe this would be better. It's like, oh, you don't agree with us? Well, in a week, if you come back and decide to scrim more, we'll see how your opinion stands. And it's just like, dang, that sucks. Like,
yeah, so it was jarring because it was a little bit more flexible. And I think for people to go from an environment where anyone can show up, there's an infinite number of teams, to now there's a finite number of teams, and that was naturally going to happen anyways with custom codes, regardless of who took over. So that's not really on GLL,
Their
right?
fault,
That's
yeah.
not their
Right.
fault. But you go from X number of teams can show up, and that X is infinite, and then you go to 60 teams or 40 teams or 20 teams, but there's no flexibility in it. Then all of a sudden, that's obviously a bit more of an issue because um, you've got teams that are getting banned or suspended or dropped out of a tier for whatever reason, whatever rule. And I think a lot of it boiled down to communication, right? There wasn't a lot of communication in, well, why am I getting suspended? Why am I getting banned? Or why can't, we play on this map? Or why is this not banned, like this item, the red shield or something when it's being abused or whatever, or this glitch spot, the out of bounds timer thing was a huge thing for a while. Um, there wasn't a lot of communication. There was a lot of disconnect there up to a point, and then it obviously things changed and it got a little bit better. But I think that jarring effect, like nobody really expected it, right? Because we were for the longest time the scrim host, so nobody was really expecting it. No one really saw it coming, and then it just kind of happened. So it's really jarring. So kind of coming back to passion, now all of a sudden there's gatekeeping, right? Now all of a sudden there's a wall in the way. And before it was free. Anyone could move up the ladder freely. It was literally just, did you do well? There's clear your points, how many points you got. That's what moved you up in our ladder. And that was it. It was that simple, right? There was no playing favorites, at least not in, I heard some stories about stuff from before my time, but since the time
Uh,
that I was in charge, anyways, there was no playing favorites, so there's no BS. You know what I mean? It was just, um, your points
are
dictated
you
how far
skilled
you
enough
move
to be
forward.
here? Yeah.
Yeah,
Are you
Yeah.
and it was simple. And so I think all of those things coming into play with GLL kind of was jarring for people that came from the before, right? It was jarring for people that came from the time before. And so even if in ALGS, if you look at the number of teams that signed up for the first ALGS and then compare it to some of the ones later on down the line, the player turnout really declined. And
extensively, I'd say. Like
I
it's a
think
Yeah.
massive
part
difference.
of yeah, and part of that is because of what happened with scrims. When you think about it, because scrims were um, finding ways to uh, bar players from entry, there was less practice, so they were less successful in ALGS. And now all of a sudden you're putting in all this time and effort and you're not getting the right practice that you need. So you go into ALGS, you get your butt whooped, and then now what? Is it worth it? Right? The passion's gone. Like, this is frustrating. It's not worth it. I can't get into the scrims lobby that I want to be in, or I got barred from scrims because I said that an admin was being unfair, or whatever. And I mean, some of them were
Hmm.
justified. I will say there were people that were really toxic towards the GLL staff too, and there were
I just
people that were
wanna
really toxic to us, frankly, as well. Even back in the day, there were people that were just really disrespectful, and I get it. At a certain point, you have to be able to do something about that, right? You can't just say you can say anything you want, you know?
I'd like to
So,
throw out there that I got quote unquote permanently banned from GLL for saying that the server was lagging and they should restart the server and find a different like host location. And I was banned from scrims that day and quote unquote permanently banned. And if my coach at the time and I didn't have friends in GLL, there was no way that I was gonna get unbanned in a timely fashion, right? And I think that kind of ties into what you were saying, where it's like, people were literally just getting barred out for, almost no reason. Saying a server is lagging and suggesting a server switch is not something that is like toxic or hostile in any way.
well, and again, though, you came from the time before. You
Yeah,
played in the old scrims where we would switch servers if they were lagging, right?
yeah,
I think the thing, too, though, to keep in mind is switching servers on customs. It's easier now, but back then it was more of an ordeal, right? Um, like the person, and I don't know how they run their setup exactly, but whoever was running the scrims would have to completely log out of the game, switch their server, log back into the game, reboot the server. You know what I mean? So it's not like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they shouldn't have switched if there was latency issues, but the other thing is, and I think this is where some of the disconnect was too, some of the issues had nothing to do with the server that was being played on as well.
I mean, yeah.
Some of the issues, like especially when customs were first coming out, was just a matter of server load and bugs because they were still new and things hadn't been ironed out yet, right? It was still being
Right.
tested and developed further. And even now, I mean, they're always, the Respawn developers are always working to make improvements, right? Like there's always updates. Like even now, just within the last month, I saw a list of things that might be coming to help custom servers out back when they were crashing, right after the one patch. Um, so it's like they're always working on them. They're always looking for improvements. But back then, they were so new that there was a lot of stability issues that really had nothing to do with the server host. But
Well,
again, that's I think that comes from the mentality of the people who came before versus after too.
yeah.
Um, and it's interesting when you think about it, um, just how much actually changed when that transition happened, um, with not only how things were run, but also like the drop off in number of teams and passion and participants. It kind of all happened in tandem for a while, um, to a point where I recall there was a while where scrims couldn't even be filled because there weren't enough teams. And I think that was more frustrating for the old players because right before the first ALGS, when we were still doing Q snipes, we had over 100 teams per region per night signing up
Yeah,
to
we hit
play.
like 130 or at one point.
I
I
think it
think I
was
have a screenshot.
130 on EU.
I
It
thought I
was,
saw a
Yeah,
screenshot of 150, like 152 teams signed up. And
yeah.
probably. I mean, it was a lot.
Well, yeah, and there was a lot of hype. A part of that was the hype again, the
yeah.
Yeah,
newness of
the
it. It
new
was the
the
first
novelty.
ALGS.
Yeah,
There was a lot of anticipation for it. People wanted to get involved. And
But I mean, still going from 150, let's say 130 teams signing up every single night per region to less than 20 is a massive difference.
it is. But some of that too was also, and I think one of the things I know we're on this topic of scrims and soon to be tournaments too. But with this ALGS announcement, more money being involved, I think is going to bring more people back. Um, One of the things that I think was hurting scrims and hurting tournaments overall was that when you really broke down, and this is not, I want to make it very clear that this is not really directly Respawn's fault or EA's fault in any way, shape, or form. COVID really screwed up the growth and momentum of tournament play for Apex.
Mhm.
The timing could
100%.
not
yeah,
possibly have been worse. Literally, the very first tournament that was going to be at LAN, and then COVID breaks out. It absolutely destroyed the momentum. And that's just not their fault, right? It's just not their fault. Um,
The
but
Texas land.
the thing that people don't think about with that, and a lot of people threw blame on Respawn and EA for this, that's unjust and unfair, is that affects sponsorship, right?
right,
The type of money that they can put forward to these events is directly affected by how much attention it's going to get. The marketability of it. And lands bring a lot of hype. Lands bring a lot of eyes. You can sell things at a land. You can sell products. You can push products there. And now you're double dipping, right? Because you've got the people that are going, the people that are going to watch in person. You've got all of the brands that can be displayed in that arena. And then also you've got the people watching from home. And now you cut that land out of the equation and you've cut down a significant source of marketability. And that just affected, frankly, their bottom line with how much money they could really justify putting into these online only tournaments for quite some time until they started doing the crowdfunding thing with the skins, which I think is a great idea to
yeah. I
help
think so
inflate the
too.
prize pool. But at the time, anyways, that's all they could do. But that doesn't make it, unless you're winning every tournament, it just wasn't worth it for a lot of people that had to work jobs or pay off their student loans or whatever.
You're
Um,
right.
And I think that is a factor that has nothing to do with GLL, nothing to do with us when we were T1, etc. That's just an external factor that I think affected participation, right? So there's a lot of things that go into it, but when you think about it, like the way things looked in scrims before GLL and after, I think was really heavily impacted by the ability to make money in the game if you were a competitor. And
Which, I mean, I'm super excited now because
Mhm,
of the, I guess, not as recent, but the monster sponsorship for ALGS, right?
mhm. Yeah,
Like that's a massive
That's
partnership
pretty
that
huge. Yeah.
will help out with, I guess, that tournament funding and that, um ability to, I guess, promote like monster. I mean, you know, I don't really know if we should talk about this, but the the monster partnership coming up in a few days, right? Where you're gonna get like in-game skins and rewards that's been leaked all over Twitter, blah blah blah, for like, getting monster, and
Like you can go out and purchase a monster and you'll get something in game.
it's like the
yeah,
old like Mountain Dew Call of Duty partnership where it's
yep.
like
Mhm.
double XP for an hour if you buy a Mountain Dew, and it's like it's
Or
kind of the same thing where you get in-game skins and rewards for, I guess, making purchases of monster.
yeah,
You
Yeah,
already know I'm gonna be buying so much monster. I'm just saying right now.
I mean, low key, I already do.
that's
So,
Yeah, same,
hey,
same.
right.
but yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That partnership's going to be huge for the competitive scene in general, and I think Land's coming back is just that's really going to help a
I'm
lot too.
Lance
excited.
coming back is huge. Like I think there's so many people that are just looking forward to Lands, and then just the scene coming back, and you
Yeah.
see new orgs getting excited too because I mean like Noble picked up a team again
Hmm.
today. We just talked about with Farmer Lucas, Impulsive Dream, and
Rakanish.
Yeah,
Rakanishu,
yeah,
which
The
is
that's
which
true.
is huge
farmers,
because
man.
it's seeing well sort of 2/3.
I mean, yeah, it just shows that, like, orgs are starting to get interested in the game again, and no, it's hard to
Yeah,
bring that
exactly, and
passion
that's
back once it's lost, and I feel like that's an issue with, I guess, a lot of the OG players, the people who started, and I guess Apex.Pro or Tier 1 scrims or any
yeah. We
time during that
used to.
period.
I used to play an MMO called EVE Online, and we had a term for those people. We used to call them bitter vets
Yeah,
because they were the people who were more experienced, older to the scene, but they were just angry about everything.
that's that's very accurate, actually. I
Yeah,
mean,
we called them bitter vets.
it's scary how accurate that is for a lot of these players, and that's
Well,
something I think that, like, new players or casual players will never understand, is like why we're so bitter about that type of stuff,
I think there's
Yeah,
layers to that too. I mean, at the very top end, the more people allowed in, up until, of course, this point where now competitive has more funding. But when competitive had very little funding, if you were going to make it, you had to win or come in second or come in third all the time. So the
Mm,
more
yeah.
people coming in,
You had to beat TSM basically.
yeah, and so the more people coming in, unless you were a content creator, that was pretty much the only way to guarantee that you were going to make money. Because
Yeah,
otherwise, it's just do you win the tournament or not, right? And so more people coming in, more competitors directly affected their wallet, right? So I
right.
think there's
Yeah,
kind of there's a reason for that bitterness a little bit too. It's not just a game; it was literally their livelihood.
yeah,
In some cases, there's people that dropped everything to try to go pro. Um, and the game, unfortunately, because of the timing of COVID,
highly.
just it had a hard time recovering from that. But I think also, I know this was, I know I'm not a host, but I just noticed that this was one of our topics too, and it ties totally into this. And getting codes, codes being restricted for the longest time to only GLL or specific tournament hosts was a factor too. It's easier now, but at the time, you either had to be GLL or you had to be somebody that was hosting a big enough sized tournament to get access to a code.
I think
Or you had
that
to be a
the
well-known
cutoff was
content creator with a
$10,000,
big
right?
enough clout.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no. Yeah.
I think that I remember seeing that like hard number somewhere that was like, if you hosted a tournament for this amount of money or more, we can potentially set you up with private codes.
Yeah,
And
and that was the hard set rule, but it was never fully enforced,
yeah,
as far as I understand.
Yeah, and there's kind of two different things too. The partnership program, it's different, and I think a lot of people don't know this too. But there's actually two different teams that deal with that, right? You've got the community side and you've got the competitive side. So the community side, and a lot of competitors got mad about this, and I'm not going to name names, and I know you both know who I'm talking about, but somebody got codes that didn't really play Apex that much and wasn't very skilled. And at the time, anyways, I'm sure they've improved over time as they've played the game more. But at the time, they barely played. And they
They
got it to
definitely still play the
play.
game 100%.
Okay, well, I don't pay attention to that. So, but anyways, they got the codes to play hide and seek with their Twitch community, and a lot of competitors were really frustrated
I
with
mean, I
that
was pissed
because
at that.
I was too, honestly. I remember
I
going
was
to
so
Twitter,
mad.
typing my heart
I just
out.
opened a
Like,
can of worms. Um,
yeah, you did. Honestly, I
But-
was
For
mean-
real, I was so mad. I still am a little mad when I think about it.
at the
Like,
time.
That's the thing. It's two different teams, right? And that's where I was going with this. People don't realize that the people that gave codes to that person for that event was specifically from the community side, and it's for advertisement for Apex, right? Because
well, yeah, but
that's marketability. But
sure. But the thing
competitive
is
side was different.
they never stated that. They never made sure people understood that, and that's their fault.
I feel like that communication barrier right there is something that is a necessity that they didn't have, where it's like,
They still don't have. Okay, sorry.
I agree, but like,
Mm,
hot take.
are
But
you asking?
I mean, it's something that it's like, they don't need to tell us everything they're doing, right? I completely understand, like, we don't need to know everything. But when it comes down to, I guess, competitive players being forced to use one singular hosting website and then seeing somebody that, creates content getting codes to play hide and seek is very aggravating, because it's like, you're
Mhm.
telling me your professional scene can't get reliable scrims, but, somebody who doesn't even play the game can be like, all right, guys, I want to, get 59 people of my viewers and we're going to play hide and seek. And it's like,
That's what. Yeah, and with no communication, it's hard to justify not being mad at that.
I can
From a
see
competitive
it
standpoint,
from a
I guess.
competitive standpoint because
Yeah.
I was a competitor when that happened, and I totally understand the frustration. But I think what people aren't being fair about when it comes to Respawn and EA in this particular case is this literally happens everywhere, even in real sports, all the time, even in the film industry, right? This stuff happens everywhere, and for some reason, Respawn and EA were held to a different standard when that happened, right? And I think it was just general frustration with when scrims transferred over,
Yeah.
and it was a jarring experience for a lot of veterans. But if you look, like, think about when you have a celebrity come play a professional sport for funsies. They're
Yeah.
obviously not a pro, it's a show match, right?
Yeah.
And then vice versa, you might have an
Or like a
athlete
first pitch of a
that's
game type deal.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a perfect example. Or you might have an athlete that stars in a movie, and they're obviously not an actor, and they're not maybe not even a good actor. They're just there because of who they are, right? That's marketability. Now people are going to go see that movie because that athlete's
Their
in it.
favorite athlete is
Exactly,
like.
and
I
that
get it
happens
logically.
everywhere
I mean,
in every game. I mean, Fortnite.
I
Look
mean,
at Fortnite. They've got
yeah.
musicians
the
coming in to
Travis
put
Scott concert and
concerts.
all that stuff. Yeah, the Morse code
Yeah,
concert and
like,
all
and
that. Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, it literally happens everywhere all the time. It's all about marketing and sponsorship at that point. And how much money is it going to make? How much
Yeah,
revenue is it going to make? So I think, like, I understand why the players were frustrated. It maybe could have been communicated a little bit better, but at the same token, I think it was really unfair to hold Respawn and EA so accountable for that when everybody else does it all the time too, everywhere in the world for
And
everything.
I mean, I kind of agree, but I kind of don't agree because that's like saying that I don't know. Let's just say Rihanna, whatever, saying that she would get a whole team to compete in like the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
You
that's
see what I'm
just
saying? Like it's like
No,
getting the opportunity. It is. It's getting an opportunity that people have been asking for.
no, but it's different though because you're talking about two different things, right? The person that I'm very specifically avoiding names on, who did that, wasn't trying to get custom codes to compete in the ALGS, right?
You're right, but there are also competitors with decent followings that were asking for codes to do tournaments.
Right, but at the
yeah,
time there
but
was no
that's
rule set yet. Remember, custom
tournaments.
codes were still new; they were still being
No,
tested.
I'm aware. I'm aware. The issue, I just don't think it was of them, and like I don't think that it's a different standard. I think this is a different situation.
I kind of agree with both sides here, and I want to keep this topic short because it has been an hour and 20 already. But
Yeah,
what I want to say is like I agree to the point of yes, it's marketing. Yes, I understand Apex wanted marketing. Person with a following came in and said, "Hey, can we do this event? Sure, whatever, blah blah blah." But what I think like the massive issue with Apex is kind of like Mario was saying is it was in that transition period where all the original, scrim people were almost overnight um like forced to completely switch the way they've been scrimming for months and kind of overnight just accept that and deal with it. And then, right after that happens, we see, now these custom codes that we can only get through GLL and we can only scrim through GLL are now being given out to people to play hide and seek. And I think that is where like um at least from my opinion is where the issue was. It's not that this happens everywhere. I think it was since it was in that transition period and there was so much tension and I guess aggressiveness either towards GLL or with GLL that it was very aggravating to just have to deal with it, just have to sleep with it. And
Yeah, and I think
yeah, I completely
communication
agree.
could have gone a long way there, frankly.
uh,
Communication could have gone a long way, but the same token, that's also their business, and it's not our
yeah,
right to know their business. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So, like, I see it from a business perspective too. It was just the timing was rough. Tensions were already high. It is what it is. But the good news is, and getting back on topic to get these last two things buttoned up quicker because it has been an hour 20. Now the process for getting codes is a lot easier. Um, and that doesn't have to be a worry anymore for people getting into the game now. There's a community tournament guideline webpage, which I'm sure we can get somebody to link somewhere, wherever the editor is. Put it over here,
or
uh,
down or in the
or down
description.
down here, or
There
something
you
down
go.
in
Down in
the
the description,
description. There
yeah.
you go. Um, and at the
Well, we'll
bottom
also
of
have the ALGS. We'll also have the ALGS description.
Yeah,
yeah,
the announcement for ALGS blog and all that stuff will be linked down below as well.
Perfect.
yeah. But there's and that link for the community tournament guidelines. There's also an email at the bottom, and that email is where you just send in anybody. Literally anybody can send an email and say, "Hey, I want to run an event." Now, not necessarily everyone's going to get approved, right? You have to have something that's worth running, whether that's going to bring attention, whether it's good for the community, whether it's a charity thing, whatever the case may be. But it's not restricted like it was before, where only very specific people could get access to them.
Right.
um, there's a bit of a turnaround time on it too. But um, for people that want to host long term, there's also a hub for tournament organizers, and that's got a little bit more um, quick
Exclusivity
quick well, it's
almost.
got yeah, it's a little bit more exclusive for people that have been established. Like, we're in there with other bigger hosts like Nerd Street, Realm, etc. People that have
Yeah,
been
and it's
around
it's
for a
more
long
of
time.
like a scheduling and organization hub than anything else. It's like making sure that scrims don't overlap with each other and stuff like that.
Yeah, but it's also a little bit, you might get quicker access to information that way too, because you're all in
Right.
there communicating together, right? So there's a little bit less of a wait for established people like that, but for the average person, like just going through that email is the way to do it. And they're the guys that run it. I work with one closely, and I'll just give him a shout out. Somebody buy Joseph some pizza. He's awesome. He's
For real.
super helpful.
Yes.
He responds timely. He's such a nice guy. And I know he loves pizza. So somebody needs to buy that man some pizza. I will happily do it
Look,
when I have the means.
I'm not playing
Um,
favors, but he might be my favorite response.
but now the process is so simple. As long as you're following those guidelines and you go through that email and you've got something that's a real tournament, you know, you're in. It's really that easy.
Yeah.
Um, which allows for a lot more smaller tournaments to take place. And we actually recently picked up hosting on behalf of a creator who's been doing various things. Sometimes they're themed things like rank limits so that it's not too sweaty for people who want to just get into competitive for the first time. Or
Or old
she,
meta tournaments.
yeah, old meta, like the throwback Watson Path Wraith
Wraith, yeah.
tournament. And she's got other ideas coming too. Um, so like we recently picked up hosting that, for example. And I think that um, hosting these tournaments and on the back end, first and foremost, for anyone that wants to get into hosting tournaments, just understand that it's a lot more in depth and a lot more work than you probably think it is. There, there are a lot of moving parts to get 60 players minimum, right? Because you're talking about that's just a single lobby. 60 players all in the same spot on the same time, following the same rule set and doing it correctly so that things move smoothly. And then you got to keep things moving forward on your end. The back end of hosting a tournament is you've got all the codes to manage. You've got the admin code, which starts the lobby, and then you've got the player code that the players receive. So you've got to manage those, make sure it's all right, make sure you don't leak it, make sure nobody else leaks it. Then you got to think about how you're going to keep track of scores, how you're going to display those scores. Do you have an observer? Do you have a casting team? Do you have production? Those are all layers that go into it as well. Advertising and marketing your event, or is this going to be promoted through Discord, through Twitter, through a website? Um, is it going to be streamed on a streaming service like Twitch or YouTube? Um, Sponsorship. Do you want there to be a prize pool? Do you need sponsors for that? You've got to talk about at that point what type of impressions you're going to get from the event, how marketable is the event? Why does a sponsor want to give you money, right? Do you have high tier pro players? That's going to attract attention. Do you not? Then why do they want to give you money, So you've got to look at your viewership analytics. So for somebody that just wants to do something casual, like the thing that we've picked up, for Sarah is the one that has been running them. She wants to do something to just get like up and coming streamers and people that want to dip their feet into competitive for the first time. It's like a place for them, and which is something we're passionate about too. It's just getting more people involved and see more growth out of players, which is why we picked it up. Um, that you don't have to worry too much, right? That's pretty straightforward. You're just scorekeeping. You're just hosting at that point. Captain slots, sign up sheets, that sort of thing. But for people that want to do anything bigger and you get money involved, then you got to start thinking about payouts too. And I think a lot of people may not think about this when they're thinking about payouts, but there are regions where gambling's prohibited and competitive gameplay is considered gambling. Um, so I think for a while, I don't know if it's still the case, but there are portions of Canada, um, like certain regions in Canada that have restrictions. Certain countries have gambling restrictions that will prevent you from playing. I know there was a reason a while ago in ALGS, one of the top teams wasn't able to compete actually because one of their players was from a country that had gambling laws that conflicted with EA's rule set. Um, so those are all things that you kind of got to keep in mind. But for the people that can pull it off, for hosts like us, for hosts like Nerd Street, for hosts like revival games and Chicken Coop and Crown Series. Um, you know, uh, it's giving players a way to get in that they may not have had before because ALGS, it only happens so often. And when it does, players that are just trying to start competing for the first time, you are absolutely getting slapped down by the alpha team in every lobby, right? If TSM's in your lobby and you just started, are you even
You're
really going to get to play?
Just
You
stay
yeah.
know,
away.
you
You're
know.
gonna be sitting there like looting up let's say refinery or something, not refinery, sorting factory, and they're gonna pull up mid rotation 3 minutes into the match and wipe you with white armor and a P20. You know what I mean? That's how it
Yeah.
goes,
Yeah,
and you
I
just
hate
don't
to
stand a
cut it off, but I
chance.
know we could go on forever about
But
this. So I'm just gonna
yeah,
kind of try to pull the plug here right after you finish your thought.
yeah. So I guess what I was saying is these small tournaments, they really have a role to play in allowing up and coming players to get involved with competitive Apex.
and kind of a last thought topic that, or kind of a last thought is like, a lot of these bigger teams, these tier one teams that do end up signing up for these small tournaments, they don't take it that serious, and they kind of, I guess, just stomp. You know what I mean? They just use the pure raw power of skill to just kind of run through it, and I think
Mhm.
that's almost an issue with some of these tournaments.
Well, that's where putting rank limits in, or you're not allowed to have professional on your team limits in. Like you can
Yeah,
kind of reverse gatekeep a little bit and say this is meant
Yeah, like
for
one pro
up and
per team
comers.
or something max.
Yeah, so there are ways around that, and I know there are a lot of tournament hosts like Sarah, like some of the stuff that we're working on, that do that. And all these small tournaments can serve a different purpose. Like some of what Crown is doing is more catered towards tier two players. Um,
It's very much a tier two scrim, basically.
yeah, and that's good too. That's healthy. That
Yeah.
allows people to start getting that bridge again to becoming a pro. And some of the other smaller ones are more for tier three and under that just want to say, I'd like to try a tournament once and see what it's like. You know what I mean? And they don't have to feel
Yeah.
bad about it. Um,
Right.
so I think there's a lot of good opportunities, and some of them too. There's a lot of stuff like I know his and hers is hosting ladies scrims, um, which might be getting a lot of women involved that may not have participated at all before.
let's
Um,
go.
Or
so
not feel comfortable participating, which is another big issue.
Kind of
well,
gives
and that,
that safe space that we've
Yeah.
seen in the
yeah,
past
and it's
month or so.
absolutely right. And I know this is way off topic, but it's kind of not because it's on the topic of that tournament. But I think a lot of people just don't really understand the level of harassment and disgusting, sorry,
Remarks.
not sorry, shit that women
Yeah.
just have to deal with when they're playing a game. I mean, just dropping in a pub if they hot mic one time and there's some toxic kid on the other side, it's just using Sarah as an example because we were just talking about her. She just posted a tweet about
Oh, yeah.
someone telling her to get back in the kitchen and make her a sandwich just because she opened her mouth one time. And these people are just the comments are disgusting, immature, inappropriate. They really have no place in gaming, but it happens, right? And so I think having these specialty small tournaments, like something for women, like something for people of color, um, it really gives people that might be afraid to branch out and try these things a place to do that.
And I mean, something that I'm gonna say is like Janie, for example, right? She's
Mhm.
now signed to TSM. Janie was probably one of the best teammates I've had, and that's it. It just shows that like there's so much untapped potential in, I guess, these people who aren't male or not white male in the gaming industry, right? Where it's
Mhm.
like there's so much potential that just hasn't been touched because of one thing or another, and it really shows that you know you could
Yeah,
I completely agree.
find god players anyway.
yeah. I just had a conversation with a couple of women the other night that are content creators, and they're not small. These are like One of them's partnered on Twitch, you know what I mean? But they told me, like, "I just won't solo queue because I don't wanna deal with it. I will
Yeah,
not play by myself, I will only play with people I know, I will only play with a teammate," and it just shouldn't be like that, you know?
exactly.
It
Yeah,
just shouldn't be like that. It's gatekeeping them, un and it's unfair, and, the reality is not on it's bad for all of the obvious reasons that it's bad, right? But it's also limiting the scene. It's limiting the growth of the scene as a whole. You're missing out on opportunities. Like you said, Janie is cracked. She is absolutely nuts. Phenomenal player. And I know a lot of
Yeah,
women
I
that
mean,
are really skilled.
yeah. I actually got a chance to play with Isakis in a tournament just recently. We ended up winning, and it was
Mhm.
just a small tournament. But like, she's insane, and I had never heard of her until now, which maybe is my fault.
Luciana's another one
But
that we saw in
yeah,
champs.
Mhm.
and Sally Nono, I think her name
Mhm.
is also insane. And it's like all of these women players who are just crazy at the game either are uncomfortable playing in a setting with where they will get harassed, which totally fair, I would be too, or they just haven't had an opportunity because of the way that the majority of the male players handle finding teams and how kind of like clicky it is.
Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And it's, so these small tournaments can give space for people to grow in the scene. And I think that's a really good thing. I mean, you really anyone who's underprivileged, whether it's people of color, women, LGBT Q. It's a place for a lot of people that may not have an opportunity otherwise to get a start, and
Right.
it's good for their content as well. You know, how many
Yeah, absolutely.
big content creators say, "I'm streaming this tournament." Well, now they have a tournament that they can stream too. You know?
yeah. Well, I think that's a pretty good place to wrap it up. Do you guys have any final thoughts or comments or anything like that?
I just wanted to thank you for agreeing to come on the show with us, Mari. It's been a pleasure listening to all your viewpoints on these things.
Oh yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me. Thanks for giving me the chance to come on and be a part of what you guys have going on here. I love what you guys are doing. I think these podcasts are really healthy for any scene, So I think it's really cool to get some perspective out there, and what you guys are doing is awesome.
Appreciate that. Yep. Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
on, Mari. I will say that we will leave a link to Battlecord in the description of this video. So if you guys are looking for a place to, I guess, find future teammates or find people to rank with, go ahead and go down there, click that link. Um, you
I also
can
There's a
think we
lot
should,
of tournament
yeah,
information too.
tournament information
we
and
should also leave links to some streamers that we talked about on the podcast as well.
oh, for
Yeah,
sure.
for whoever the editor is down below, we can get some links to people that we've talked about. That would be nice.
In order of appearance, if possible.
If possible,
But
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think this is a great episode. It is a long one though. It is almost an hour and 40. This is almost enough for two
This is our
podcasts in
longest one,
one.
yeah.
We can
But
probably There's probably a little bit of
we'll
trimming that
see.
could
We'll
be done in a
see.
certain section of that I think we're all thinking about, but
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I think it was a good episode. Hopefully everybody in the viewer standpoint enjoyed. This has been the final ring. Zoro, Kwla, Mari. We'll catch you guys later.